There are nights ordinary on the surface where everything feels routine. You scroll a little longer. You replay conversations in your mind. You tell yourself, it's not a big deal, I'll deal with it tomorrow. And yet, something inside you feels unsettled. A quiet tension. A lingering frustration. A heaviness that refuses to leave your chest. And tonight, June 8th, is not one of those ordinary nights. This is the kind of night heaven interrupts. This is the kind of moment where what you carry into your sleep determines what follows you into your future. Archangel Michael stands at the edge of this moment, not in silence, but in urgency. His presence is not distant. It is close. It is pressing. It is intentional. And his message cuts through the noise of your thoughts with clarity. Do not sleep angry tonight. Not tomorrow. Not later. Tonight. Because what feels like just a bad mood, what feels like just a small argument, what feels like I'm right, and they're wrong is not as harmless as it appears. There is something deeper moving beneath the surface. Something strategic. Something watching for an open door. Have you noticed how certain arguments don't leave you? How even after the conversation ends, your mind keeps replaying it over and over again. You think of what you should have said. You imagine what you will say next time. Your heart races. Your spirit tightens. And before you know it, your peace has quietly slipped away. That is not random. That is not just emotion. That is the moment the enemy waits for. Because anger carried into the night doesn't stay small. It doesn't stay contained. It grows in the dark. It multiplies in silence. It turns distance into division and misunderstanding into separation. And here is the truth that most people miss. The enemy does not need a big fight to create a big fracture. He only needs one unresolved moment. One night where you choose pride over peace. One night where you say, I'll deal with it later. But what if later never comes the way you expect? What if tonight is the turning point? What if the tension you feel right now is not just about what was said, but about what is trying to be planted? Because Archangel Michael reveals something critical in this moment. There is a spiritual line drawn between what you release and what you carry. And tonight, that line matters more than you realize. You may be thinking, it's not that serious. You may be telling yourself, they hurt me first. You may feel justified in holding on to that anger just a little longer. But listen carefully. This is where destinies quietly shift. This is where relationships either heal or begin to break. This is where peace is either protected or slowly replaced with distance. And the most dangerous part, it doesn't happen all at once. It happens one night at a time. One unresolved feeling at a time. One decision to go to sleep angry at a time. But tonight, June 8th, heaven is not allowing it to pass unnoticed. You are being stopped, interrupted, called into awareness. Not because you are weak, but because you are chosen to see what others ignore. Not because you are wrong, but because you are being trusted with a higher response. Archangel Michael is not asking you to pretend nothing happened. He is not asking you to ignore the hurt. He's asking you to recognize the timing. Because something is trying to turn a moment into a pattern. And if you break it tonight, it loses its power. If you release it tonight, it cannot follow you into tomorrow. So pause right now. Feel what you're holding. Acknowledge it. And ask yourself, is this worth carrying into my future? Because this is not just about sleep. This is about spiritual alignment. This is about protecting your peace before the night closes. And this is your moment to choose differently. Type I choose peace in the comments if you receive this message. Blessing code 808 is now surrounding you. There is something about anger that feels justified in the moment. It feels earned. It feels deserved. You replay what was said, how it was said, the tone, the timing, the disrespect you perceived. And deep inside, a voice rises and says, "You have every right to feel this way." And maybe you do. Maybe the words did cut deeper than they should have. Maybe the silence hurt more than any argument. Maybe the disappointment was heavier than you expected. But what you are feeling right now is exactly where the silent seed is planted. Because division never begins with distance. It begins with a feeling that is left unresolved. It begins quietly, almost invisibly. No loud explosion, low dramatic ending. Just a subtle shift in your spirit. A hesitation where there used to be openness. A coldness where there used to be warmth. A pause where there used to be flow. And you may not even recognize it at first. You just feel off. You just feel different. You just feel like something has changed even if nothing outwardly has. That is the seed. And the danger of a seed is not in how it looks when it is planted. It is in what it becomes if it is left alone. Archangel Michael reveals that this is how the enemy operates with precision. Not through chaos at first, but through subtlety. He does not rush to destroy. He starts by planting. One moment of offense. One unresolved feeling. One silent decision to withdraw instead of communicate. And once that seed is planted, it begins to grow in the unseen places of your heart. You stop expressing the same way. You stop trusting the same way. You stop showing up with the same energy. Not because you made a conscious decision to change, but because something inside you quietly shifted. And the other person feels it too. They may not understand it, but they sense it. So they respond differently. They pull back. They become guarded. And now, without a single word spoken, a gap begins to form. This is how division grows. Not from one big moment, but from many small unaddressed ones. You think you are protecting yourself. You think you are avoiding conflict. You think you are keeping the peace. But in reality, you are allowing distance to take root where clarity should have been planted. And the longer that distance remains, the harder it becomes to bridge it. Have you ever noticed how something small can turn into something you can't even trace back anymore? How one night of going to sleep upset turns into days of silence. How days turn into emotional disconnection. How suddenly, you're not as close as you used to be, and you don't even know exactly when it changed. That is not accidental. That is the silent seed doing its work. Because seeds grow best in the dark. And when anger is carried into the night, it is given the perfect environment to expand. Your thoughts water it. Your assumptions feed it. Your silence protects it. And before you realize it, what was once a moment has now become a mindset. You begin to see everything through the lens of that hurt. You interpret words differently. You assume intentions that may not even be real. You build a narrative in your mind that feels true, even if it is incomplete. And slowly, the connection begins to weaken, not because love is gone, but because misunderstanding has taken its place. Archangel Michael warns that this is the exact point where many destinies begin to shift without people realizing it. Relationships that were meant to grow begin to fracture. Bonds that were meant to strengthen begin to weaken. Not because they were meant to end, but because they were left unattended in a critical moment. And here is what makes this even more dangerous. The longer the seed remains, the more normal it starts to feel. You get used to the distance. You adapt to the silence. You convince yourself that this is just how things are now. But deep inside, there is still a knowing, a quiet awareness that something is not right. that something valuable is slipping away, not all at once, but slowly. And tonight, June 8th, that awareness is being brought to the surface for a reason. Because what you ignore now you will have to confront later at a much higher cost. This is not about forcing resolution. This is not about pretending the hurt doesn't exist. This is about recognizing that unresolved anger is not neutral, is active, is shaping your thoughts, your emotions, your actions, and ultimately, your future. You have been given a moment of clarity, a moment to see what is trying to take root before it grows beyond your control, a moment to interrupt the pattern before it becomes permanent. And the question now is not whether the seed has been planted. The question is, will you allow it to grow? Or will you uproot it while you still can? Because once you see it, you cannot unsee it. And once you are aware, you are responsible for what you do next. Type "I release all anger" in the comments if you receive this message. Blessing code 909 is now activated. There is a strategy unfolding beneath the surface of your emotions, and it is far more calculated than most people ever realize. What you feel as frustration, irritation, or even justified anger is often the entry point for something deeper, something more intentional. The enemy does not rely on obvious destruction anymore. He has refined his approach. He studies patterns. He observes reactions. He waits for moments like this, moments where your guard is down, where your heart is exposed, where your emotions are heightened. And then he moves quietly, almost undetected. Archangel Michael reveals that division is not an accident. It is an assignment. And the way it begins is so subtle that you rarely recognize it as an attack. It starts with distortion. Not lies that are obvious, but thoughts that feel true enough to believe. Thoughts like, they don't respect you. Thoughts like, they always do this. Thoughts like, you're the only one trying. These thoughts do not come loudly. They come gently, repeatedly, consistently, until they begin to shape your perception. And once your perception shifts, everything else follows. You begin to interpret tone differently. You read between lines that were never meant to be read that way. You assign intention to actions without full understanding. And suddenly, you are no longer responding to what actually happened. You are responding to what you believe it means. That is the strategy. Because if the enemy can change how you see something, he can change how you feel about it. And if he can change how you feel, he can influence how you act. This is how small misunderstandings turn into lasting separation. Not because the situation was irreversible, but because the perception was never corrected. You begin to build a case in your mind. You gather emotional evidence. You replay moments that support the narrative forming inside you. And without realizing it, you become convinced of something that may only be partially true. Archangel Michael warns that this is where spiritual warfare becomes personal. Not in dramatic events, but in internal battles. Battles over interpretation. Battles over memory. Battles over meaning. Because once your inner world is influenced, your outer world begins to reflect it. And here is the part most people overlook. The enemy does not need both people to be deceived. He only needs one. One person holding onto a fence. One person assuming the worst. One person choosing silence instead of clarity. That is enough to begin the fracture. And once that fracture begins, it naturally widens over time if left unaddressed. You may be wondering why certain relationships that once felt effortless now feel strained. Why conversations that used to flow now feel forced. Why there is tension where there used to be peace. And the answer is not always something that was done outwardly. Often, it is something that was planted inwardly. A thought that was never challenged. a feeling that was never released, a narrative that was never questioned. That is the hidden strategy. It is not about destroying connection instantly. It is about slowly weakening it until it no longer resembles what it once was. And tonight, June 8th, this strategy is being exposed for a reason. Because once you see it, you gain power over it. Once you recognize that not every thought is truth, you begin to pause before reacting. Once you understand that not every feeling should be trusted without reflection, you begin to question what you carry. And once you realize that division often begins internally, you become intentional about protecting your inner world. Archangel Michael is not just revealing the problem, he is revealing your authority. You have the ability to interrupt the pattern. You have the power to challenge the thought before it settles. You have the awareness to separate truth from assumption. But it requires something many people resist in moments like this. It requires humility. The willingness to say, maybe there is more to this than what I feel right now. The willingness to pause instead of react. The willingness to seek clarity instead of assuming intention. Because the enemy thrives in assumption. He thrives in silence. He thrives in distance. But he loses power in truth. He loses influence in communication. He loses access when awareness is activated. And that is exactly what is happening to you right now. You are becoming aware. You are beginning to see the pattern. You are recognizing that what feels personal may actually be strategic. And that realization changes everything. Because now, you are no longer reacting blindly. You are responding with understanding. You are choosing with intention. You are stepping out of the cycle before it completes itself. And that is how division is stopped, not after it fully forms, but while it is still in seed form, while it is still internal, while it is still within your control. Tonight is not just another night. It is a moment of interruption. A moment where what has been hidden is being revealed. A moment where you are being given the opportunity to choose differently, to think differently, to respond differently. Because once the strategy is exposed, it cannot operate the same way again. And you are no longer unaware. You are positioned. You are alert. You are ready to break what was trying to quietly build. Type I see the truth in the comments if you receive this message. Blessing code 111 is now activated. As this revelation settles into your spirit, understand this: every time this message reaches another heart, another family is protected from silent division. This is not just a video. This is a seed of unity being sown across lives that are on the edge of breaking. Scripture declares, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called children of God." And right now, that calling is resting on you. I feel it stirring inside me, the desire to help this message reach someone who needs it before it's too late. When you release your support through Super Thanks or the PayPal link in the description or QR code, you are not giving to a channel. You are fueling light that interrupts darkness in someone else's home. Heaven sees every seed, and what you release in obedience returns to you in multiplied peace and restoration. Do not delay this moment. Step into it. Activate it. So now, and let God use you as a vessel of unity. There are moments in life that seem small while you are inside them. Moments that feel like they will pass without consequence. Moments you convince yourself are not significant enough to shape anything beyond the present. Tonight can feel like that. Just another night. Just another disagreement. Just another feeling you plan to deal with later. But what you must understand, what Archangel Michael is urgently revealing, is that some of the most powerful shifts in your life are not born in major events, but in quiet decisions made in ordinary moments. And tonight is one of those moments. Because what you choose to do with your heart before you close your eyes carries more weight than you realize. It is not just about rest. It is not just about sleep. It is about alignment. It is about what you allow to settle into your spirit while your guard is down and your mind is at rest. Archangel Michael speaks with clarity here. One night of unresolved anger can begin a pattern that takes weeks, months, even years to undo. Not because the situation itself was so large, but because of what that night allowed to take root. When you go to sleep holding on to frustration, your mind does not simply turn off. It continues processing. It replays. It reinforces. It strengthens the emotional pathways connected to that hurt. And by the time you wake up, what you felt the night before often feels heavier, more justified, more real. The emotion has had time to settle, to deepen, to anchor itself within you. And this is where the shift begins. Because the next day, you do not approach the situation with the same openness. You approach it with residue, with assumption, with a quiet defense already in place. Your words carry a different tone. Your presence carries a different energy. And even if nothing new has happened, everything feels different. This is how one night becomes a turning point. Not because something dramatic occurred, but because something internal was allowed to remain unresolved. Archangel Michael reveals that the enemy understands this principle deeply. He does not need to create constant chaos. He only needs to influence a few critical moments. Moments where your decision determines the direction of what follows. And the night is one of his most strategic opportunities. Because at night, your guard is lower. At night, your emotions are less filtered. At night, what you carry settles deeper. And if what you carry is anger, resentment, or offense, it does not stay at the surface. It embeds itself into your inner world, shaping how you wake up, how you think, how you respond, and ultimately, how you move forward. You may not notice the shift immediately. It feels subtle at first, but over time, it becomes undeniable. You feel less connected, less patient, less willing to understand, and slowly, without intention, you begin to build distance where closeness once existed. But here's the truth that changes everything. The same way one night can begin a pattern of division, one night can also initiate a path of restoration. One decision, to release instead of hold on, to forgive instead of replay, to soften instead of harden, has the power to interrupt what was trying to form. This is why tonight matters so deeply. This is why Archangel Michael is not speaking about tomorrow or next week. He is speaking about now. Because delay strengthens what should have been dissolved, and action weakens what was trying to grow. You may feel resistance in this moment. You may feel that inner voice saying, but they were wrong. You may feel the pull to hold on to what feels justified. And that feeling is real. It is valid. But it is also where the decision becomes powerful. Because this is not about who was right. This is about what you are choosing to carry. This is about whether your peace is more valuable than your position. This is about whether your future is more important than this moment of tension. Archangel Michael is not asking you to deny your feelings. He is asking you to decide what you will do with them. Will you carry them into the night, allowing them to shape what comes next? Or will you release them before they take deeper root? Because the night does not just pass. It processes. It settles. It amplifies what you bring into it. And that is why this decision, this single moment, holds so much weight. You are standing at a quiet crossroads. Not one that the world sees. Not one that others will recognize. but one that will shape the tone of what follows in ways you may not fully understand yet. And in this moment, you are not powerless. You are not trapped in your reaction. You are not bound to what you feel right now. You are being given a choice. A choice to interrupt the pattern. A choice to protect your peace. A choice to align with something higher than the emotion pulling at you. Because what you choose tonight does not stay in tonight. It follows you. It shapes you. It prepares the ground for what comes next. And that is why this moment matters. That is why this decision carries weight. That is why you are being called into awareness right now. Because one night can change more than you think. Type "I release" before I rest in the comments if you receive this message. Blessing code 1212 is now activated. There is a kind of silence that feels peaceful, and then there is a kind of silence that carries weight. Tonight, many are sitting in that second kind of silence. Words that should have been spoken are being held back. Feelings that should have been expressed are being buried beneath pride, hesitation, or fear of making things worse. And on the surface, it may seem like nothing is happening. No argument. No confrontation. No noise. But in the spirit, something is building. Because unspoken words do not disappear. They accumulate. They settle in the heart like unprocessed emotion, growing heavier with every moment they are left unaddressed. And Archangel Michael reveals that this is one of the enemy's most overlooked strategies, not just to create division through conflict, but to deepen it through silence. You tell yourself, it's not worth bringing up. You convince yourself, I'll just let it go. You decide, it's better to avoid this than deal with it. But what you call avoidance, the spirit recognizes as delay. And delay, when it comes to truth, creates distortion. Because when something remains unspoken, your mind begins to fill in the gaps. You start assuming what the other person meant. You begin creating explanations for their behavior without ever confirming if those explanations are true. And over time, those assumptions harden into beliefs. Beliefs that were never clarified. Beliefs that were never challenged. Beliefs that begin to shape how you see that person moving forward. Archangel Michael warns that this is where many relationships quietly begin to deteriorate. Not from what was said, but from what was never said. From conversations that were postponed. From truths that were softened into silence. From emotions that were hidden instead of healed. Because communication is not just about speaking. It is about releasing. Releasing tension before it turns into distance. Releasing confusion before it turns into assumption. Releasing hurt before it transforms into resentment. And when that release does not happen, the weight remains. You carry it into your next interaction. You carry it into your tone, your body language, your energy. Even when you are trying to act normal, something feels off. Something feels forced. Something feels guarded. And the other person senses it, even if they cannot explain it. So they respond accordingly. They become cautious. They pull back. They mirror the distance you are unknowingly creating. And now, without a single clear conversation, both of you are standing further apart than you were before. This is how silence becomes separation. Not instantly, but gradually. Not loudly, but quietly. Archangel Michael reveals that pride often disguises itself in these moments. It tells you that you should not have to explain yourself. It tells you that if they cared, they would already understand. It tells you that speaking up makes you vulnerable, and vulnerability feels like risk. But what pride does not tell you is what it costs. It costs clarity. It costs connection. It costs peace. Because every unspoken word carries energy. And that energy does not remain neutral. It either moves toward resolution, or it settles into resistance. There is no middle ground. And tonight, June 8th, you are being made aware of that weight for a reason. Because what you carry unspoken into the night does not stay contained. It follows you into tomorrow. It shapes how you wake up. It influences how you respond. It quietly builds a wall where there should have been a bridge. You may feel like it is too late to say something now. You may feel like the moment has passed. But Archangel Michael makes this clear. What matters is not perfect timing, but honest intention. A simple word can shift more than prolonged silence ever could. A moment of humility can break what days of distance have been building. A willingness to express can dissolve what has been forming in the dark. This is not about saying everything perfectly. This is about not allowing what matters to remain buried. Because buried emotion does not stay buried. It resurfaces, often in ways you do not expect. Through tone, through reaction, through distance that cannot be easily explained. And by then, what could have been simple has become complicated. But tonight, you are being given an interruption. A moment to recognize the weight before it becomes too heavy. A moment to release what has been held back before it turns into something deeper. A moment to choose honesty over avoidance. Because silence may feel easier in the moment, but it is far more costly in the long run. And you were not called to carry what can be released. You were not meant to hold on to what can be healed. You were not positioned in this moment to stay silent when clarity is within reach. To pause, reflect, and ask yourself, what have you left unspoken that is still sitting in your spirit? Because what you release tonight will not weigh you down tomorrow. Type "I speak with peace" in the comments if you receive this message. Blessing code 2222 is now activated. There is a force that hides behind your strongest emotions, a force that does not always appear as weakness, but often disguises itself as strength. It speaks in a voice that sounds confident, justified, even protective. It tells you that you deserve better. It tells you that you should not have to bend. It tells you that standing firm in your position is the only way to maintain your dignity. But Archangel Michael steps forward in this moment with a warning that cuts through that voice with precision, because what feels like strength is often pride in disguise. And pride, when left unchecked, is one of the most dangerous doors to division. It does not announce itself openly. It does not say, "I am here to separate you." Instead, it whispers things that feel reasonable. It says if they cared, they would come to you first. It says you have already done enough. It says you are right, so why should you be the one to fix it? And these thoughts settle in your spirit, reinforcing the idea that holding your ground is the same as protecting your peace. But they are not the same. Archangel Michael reveals that pride does not protect peace. It protects position. And position, when elevated above connection, becomes the very thing that creates separation. You may feel that what you are holding on to is justified. You may feel that letting go means losing something important. But what pride does is convince you that being right is more valuable than being whole. It shifts your focus from restoration to validation. It moves your attention from healing to proving a point. And in that shift, something sacred begins to slip away. Because relationships do not break only from wrongdoing. They break from unwillingness. Unwillingness to listen. A willingness to soften. Unwillingness to move first. And pride feeds that unwillingness. It builds a wall inside you that says, "Not me. Not this time. Not after what happened." And while that wall may feel like protection, it is actually isolation forming in real time. You begin to withdraw emotionally. You begin to hold back what you would have once expressed freely. You begin to guard yourself in ways that slowly disconnect you from the very people you once felt close to. Archangel Michael warns that pride is most powerful when it feels justified. When you can point to a reason. When you can explain why you feel the way you do. Because in those moments, you stop questioning whether what you are holding onto is helping or harming you. You only focus on whether it is deserved. But tonight, June 8th, you are being called to look deeper than justification. You are being asked to examine the cost. Because pride always comes with a cost. It costs connection. It costs understanding. It costs the opportunity for peace to enter where tension has taken hold. And the longer pride remains, the more natural it begins to feel. You get used to holding back. You become comfortable in your stance. You convince yourself that this is simply how things are now. But beneath that comfort is a quiet awareness that something is not right. That something could be different. That something could be restored if only one side was willing to move. And that is where the shift becomes powerful. Because Archangel Michael is not speaking to both sides right now. He is speaking to you. Not because you are the only one involved, but because you are the one aware. You are the one being called into a higher response. You are the one being given the opportunity to break what pride is trying to build. And that does not mean lowering your value. It means elevating your perspective. It means recognizing that humility is not weakness, but strength under control. It means understanding that making the first move does not make you less. It makes you align. Because humility does what pride cannot. It opens doors. It softens hearts. It creates space for healing where tension once existed. You may not receive the response you expect immediately. You may not see instant change. But the moment you release pride, you shift the atmosphere. You interrupt the pattern. You remove the barrier that was preventing something greater from taking place. And that is why this warning is so urgent. Because pride does not just delay resolution. It deepens division. It turns moments into patterns. It turns distance into disconnection. But humility has the power to reverse what pride has started. It has the power to restore what felt like it was slipping away. It has the power to bring peace back into a space where tension has taken hold. So now, you are faced with a quiet but powerful decision. Will you hold on to what feels justified? Or will you choose what leads to restoration? Because tonight is not about who is right. It is about what you are willing to release. It is about whether pride will have the final word or peace will. And the answer to that question is in your hands. Type "I choose humility" in the comments if you receive this message. Blessing code 3333 is now activated. There is a battle unfolding that you cannot see with your physical eyes, yet you have felt its effects in ways you cannot ignore. It is not loud. It is not always obvious. But it is precise. It is intentional. And it is targeting something deeply important in your life. Your relationships. Archangel Michael reveals that what you are experiencing is not just emotional tension or personality differences. It is a strategic attempt to disrupt the very connections that were meant to strengthen you, support you, and walk with you into your next season. Because relationships are not random. They are part of your alignment. They are part of your growth. They are part of your assignment. And when something is valuable, it becomes a target. You may have noticed how certain connections that once felt natural now feel strained. Conversations that once brought ease now carry tension. Moments that used to feel light now feel heavy. And you find yourself wondering, what changed? You search for a clear reason. You try to trace it back to a specific moment. But often, There is no single event you can point to. It feels gradual, subtle, almost like something shifted without your permission. That is because the battle over your relationships does not always begin externally. It begins internally. Archangel Michael reveals that the enemy understands the power of unity. He understands that when two people are aligned, they become stronger together than they ever could be apart. He understands that connection creates support, clarity, and strength. So instead of attacking openly, he targets the connection itself. He introduces small disruptions, misunderstandings that go unclarified, feelings that go unexpressed, moments that go unresolved. And through these small openings, he begins to weaken what was once strong. You begin to question intentions. You begin to interpret actions differently. You begin to feel less safe being open, less willing to be vulnerable. And slowly, the bond begins to shift, not because it was meant to break, but because it was not being protected. This is what Archangel Michael is bringing to your awareness tonight. Because many people do not realize they are in a battle until the damage is already done. They assume it is just life. They assume it is just change. They assume it is just distance that happens naturally over time. But what if it is not natural? What if it is intentional? What if the very connections that are weakening right now are the same ones that were meant to strengthen you in the season ahead? Because not every relationship is meant to remain the same. But the ones that are meant to grow require protection. They require awareness. They require intentional effort to maintain what was given. And that is where many people miss it. They protect their position, but they do not protect their connection. They defend their feelings, but they do not defend the relationship. They hold on to what they feel, but they do not fight for what they have. And in that imbalance, the enemy finds space to operate. Archangel Michael warns that the most dangerous attacks are not the ones that destroy instantly, but the ones that slowly erode over time. Because by the time you recognize what has been lost, it feels harder to restore. The distance feels normal. The silence feels permanent. The connection feels like something that belonged to the past rather than something that can be reclaimed in the present. But tonight, June 8th, you are being given something powerful. You are being given awareness before the damage becomes irreversible. You are being shown that what you are feeling is not just emotional, it is spiritual. You are being reminded that your relationships are not something to take lightly, but something to guard intentionally. Because the battle over your relationships is not about control. It is about influence. It is about what shapes your thoughts, your responses, your willingness to stay connected or to pull away. And the moment you recognize that, you regain your authority. You begin to see beyond the surface. You begin to pause before reacting. You begin to question what is trying to create distance where there should be understanding. And that shift changes everything. Because now, you are not just responding emotionally. You are responding intentionally. You are no longer unaware of what is happening beneath the surface. You are alert. You are positioned. You are capable of protecting what matters. And that does not mean forcing something that is not meant to be. It means honoring what is worth preserving. It means recognizing that not every tension is a sign to walk away. Sometimes, it is a call to lean in with wisdom, clarity, and discernment. Sometimes, it is a moment where you are being asked to fight for unity instead of surrendering to division. And that fight does not require aggression. It requires awareness. It requires patience. It requires the willingness to choose connection even when emotion is pulling you toward distance. Because the enemy's goal is not always to remove people from your life. Sometimes, it is simply to disconnect you while they are still there. to create emotional distance while physical presence remains, to weaken the bond without removing the person. And that is why this moment matters. Because now you see it. Now you understand it. Now you are no longer operating without awareness. You have been shown what is at stake. You have been given the opportunity to respond differently. You have been positioned to protect what could have been lost. And that changes the outcome. Because when awareness meets intention, division loses its power, and unity begins to rise again. Type "I protect my connections" in the comments if you receive this message. Blessing code 4444 is now activated. There comes a moment when heaven stops observing quietly and begins to speak with unmistakable clarity. This is that moment. Archangel Michael does not whisper this instruction. He delivers it with authority, with urgency, with precision that leaves no room for delay. What you do before you close your eyes tonight matters more than you realize. Not tomorrow. Not when you feel ready. Not when the situation feels easier. The instruction is clear. Release before rest. Because rest without release is not true rest. You may lie down. You may close your eyes. Your body may become still. But your spirit remains active, carrying everything you refuse to let go of. And what you carry does not stay quiet. It moves through your thoughts. It shapes your dreams. It influences how your mind processes everything that happened. And by the time you wake up, what you refuse to release has already begun to settle deeper into your spirit. Archangel Michael reveals that this is why so many people wake up still feeling heavy, still feeling tense, still feeling disconnected. It is not because the situation grew overnight. It is because what was not released was allowed to root itself more deeply. And once it roots, it becomes harder to remove. That is why this instruction is not optional. It is divine alignment. To release before rest means you refuse to carry into the night what was never meant to stay in your spirit. It means you take authority over what you are holding, and you make a conscious decision not to let it settle. It means you recognize that forgiveness is not about the other person deserving it, but about you refusing to let their actions control your internal peace. This is where many struggle, because release feels like letting go of control. It feels like surrendering your right to hold on to what feels justified. It feels like stepping away from something your emotions are still attached to. But Archangel Michael makes this clear. Release is not loss. Release is protection. You are not losing your voice. You are protecting your peace. You are not dismissing what happened. You are deciding that what happened will not have authority over your spirit. And that decision is powerful. Because the moment you release, something shifts internally. The tension that was building begins to loosen. The thoughts that were repeating begin to quiet. The heaviness that was sitting on your chest begins to lift. Not because the situation has changed yet, but because you have changed how you are carrying it. And that shift breaks the pattern. Because the enemy relies on you holding on to things longer than necessary. He relies on you replaying, reionizing, and reinforcing what hurt you. But when you release, you interrupt his strategy. You remove the fuel that keeps the cycle going. You step out of the loop before it completes itself. Archangel Michael emphasizes that release does not always mean resolution with the other person immediately. It means resolution within yourself first. It means you choose not to go to sleep with anger as your companion. You choose not to let frustration sit beside you in the silence. You choose not to allow offense to settle into your spirit where peace is meant to reside. And this requires intention. It requires you to pause and acknowledge what you are feeling without denying it. It requires you to consciously say, I will not carry this into my rest. It requires you to shift from reaction to awareness. Because release is not passive. It is active. It is a deliberate choice to let go even when your emotions are telling you to hold on. And tonight, June 8th, that choice carries weight. Because this is not just about one moment. This is about breaking a pattern that may have repeated more times than you realize. This is about choosing a different response in a moment where you would have normally held on. This is about aligning with something higher than your immediate feelings. Archangel Michael stands as a witness to this moment, not to judge you, but to guide you, to remind you that you are not powerless over what you feel, that you have authority over what you carry, that you can choose peace even when the situation is not yet peaceful. And when you do, something begins to open. Clarity returns. Calm replaces tension. And your spirit enters rest the way it was meant to. Not burdened, not heavy, but aligned. Because true rest is not just physical. It is spiritual. It is the absence of what you chose not to carry. So now, before this night closes, you are being given one clear instruction. Release. Not partially, not temporarily, but fully. Because what you release tonight cannot follow you into tomorrow. And what cannot follow you cannot shape what comes next. This is your moment. This is your alignment. This is your decision to rest in peace, not just sleep in silence. Type I release and rest in the comments if you receive this message. Lesson code 5555 is now activated. As you step into this act of release, understand that every message like this is reaching someone standing on the edge of losing peace in their own home. This is more than words. It is oil being poured into wounded hearts, restoring what division tried to steal. The Lord declares, "Those who sow in tears shall reap in joy," and right now, your obedience can become someone else's breakthrough. I feel the call rising within me to help carry this light further, to place this message into the hands of those who are about to sleep in anger but don't have to. When you give through Super Thanks with the PayPal link in the description and QR code, you are not just supporting. You are sowing peace into lives you may never meet. Heaven marks every seed, and what you release in faith returns multiplied into your own life as restoration and favor. Do not hesitate in this moment. Move as you are led. Sow now and become a vessel of healing where division once stood. There is a weight to this moment that cannot be ignored, and yet many will still try. Many will hear this message, feel its truth, sense the urgency pressing against their spirit and still choose to carry on as if it does not matter. They will say, "I'll deal with it later." They will convince themselves that time will fix what they refuse to address. They will choose comfort over correction. And this is where Archangel Michael's tone shifts from invitation to warning. Because ignoring this call does not leave things unchanged. It sets something in motion. It allows what could have been stopped to continue growing. Archangel Michael reveals that when you choose not to release, when you choose to carry anger into your rest despite being made aware, you are not simply holding onto a feeling, you are agreeing to a pattern that does not remain contained within one moment, but begins to echo into your next interactions, your next conversations, your next decisions. You wake up with it. You move with it. You respond through it. And without realizing it, what could have been a temporary emotion becomes a permanent filter. You begin to see everything through the lens of what you refuse to release. The same words feel heavier. The same actions feel more intentional. The same person feels more distant. And slowly, the connection begins to weaken. Not because something new has happened, but because something old was never let go. This is the consequence. Not instant destruction, but gradual separation. Archangel Michael warns that the danger is not always in what you feel, but in how long you allow it to remain. Because time does not heal what is left unaddressed. Time deepens what is left unresolved. It reinforces patterns. It strengthens emotional reactions. It creates habits of thinking that become harder to break. And this is where many find themselves stuck. They do not even remember where the tension began. They do not remember what was said that started it. They only know that things are not the same anymore. That something feels off. A distance has replaced closeness. And by then, what could have been simple has become complicated. What could have been resolved in a moment now feels too heavy to confront. What could have been released in one night now requires effort to undo. But the truth is, it never had to reach that point. And that is why this warning matters. Because you are not at the end of that pattern. You are at the beginning. You are at the moment where the direction can still be changed. Where the outcome can still be altered. Where what is forming can still be stopped before it fully takes shape. But if ignored, if dismissed, if delayed, it will not remain neutral. It will move forward without your permission. It will continue building in the background. It will influence your tone, your energy, your presence in ways you may not even recognize at first. And the most dangerous part is this: over time, it will start to feel normal. You will adapt to the tension. You will adjust to the distance. You will accept a version of connection that is less than what it once was. Not because you wanted it that way, but because you allowed the shift to go unchallenged. Archangel Michael makes this clear. What you tolerate now, you train your future to accept. And if you tolerate unresolved anger, you train yourself to live with disconnection. If you tolerate silence where clarity is needed, you train yourself to function without understanding. If you tolerate distance without addressing its cause, you train yourself to settle for less than what was meant to be. But that is not your calling. That is not your alignment. That is not what this moment is meant to lead to. Because you are not being warned after the damage is done. You are being warned before it becomes permanent. You are being shown what is at stake while you still have the power to respond. And that response matters. More than you realize. More than it feels in this moment. Because this is not just about avoiding conflict. This is about preserving what was meant to grow. This is about protecting what was meant to last. This is about refusing to let a temporary feeling create a lasting divide. And the decision is yours. Plan tomorrow. Not later. Now. Because every moment you delay strengthens what should have been released. And every moment you act weakens what was trying to take hold. So ask yourself honestly, what am I choosing by holding on to this? What am I allowing to grow by refusing to let it go? And is it worth the cost it will create over time? Because once you see the consequence clearly, the decision becomes undeniable. You are not just choosing how to feel tonight. You are choosing what follows you into tomorrow. And the choice carries more power than you think. Type "I break the pattern" now in the comments if you receive this message. Blessing code 6666 is now activated. Here is a shift that happens the moment obedience meets awareness. It is not always loud. It is not always visible to others. But in the spirit, it is undeniable. Archangel Michael reveals that just as there is a consequence for holding onto anger, there is also a release of power when you choose to let it go. And tonight, June 8th, there is something specific being released. A restoration anointing that is activated the moment you align with this instruction. This is not symbolic. This is not emotional language. This is a spiritual reality. Because when you release what you were never meant to carry, you create space for what heaven has been waiting to place in your life. And that space is not empty for long. It is filled with peace, clarity, and a renewed connection that could not exist while your spirit was burdened. Archangel Michael explains that restoration does not begin when the other person changes. It begins when you do. It begins the moment you shift from holding onto offense to choosing peace. It begins when you release the need to be right and embrace the desire to be whole. It begins when you decide that what you are building is more important than what you are proving. And in that moment, something breaks. Not in the physical, but in the spiritual. The tension that was holding things in place begins to loosen. The resistance that was building between you and the other person begins to weaken. The atmosphere that felt heavy begins to open. Because restoration is not forced. It is invited. And your decision to release is the invitation. Many people wait for the other person to make the first move. They wait for an apology. They wait for acknowledgement. They wait for something external to justify their willingness to move forward. But Archangel Michael reveals that heaven does not operate on that condition. Heaven responds to alignment. And alignment begins within you. The moment you choose peace, you activate something greater than the situation itself. You open a pathway that was previously blocked by tension. And even if the other person is not immediately aware of what has changed, they will feel it. Because energy shifts before words do. Presence changes before conversations happen. And when you carry peace instead of anger, it alters the way you show up, the way you speak, the way you respond. It removes the edge from your tone. It softens your approach. It creates an environment where restoration can take place naturally instead of being forced. This is the anointing being released. It is not just about fixing what feels broken. It is about restoring what was meant to grow. It is about bringing clarity where confusion once sat. It is about reestablishing connection where distance began to form. And this anointing does not only affect your relationships. It affects you. Your mind becomes quieter. Your thoughts become clearer. Your spirit becomes lighter. Because you are no longer carrying what was weighing you down. You are no longer replaying what kept you stuck. You are no longer feeding the pattern that was trying to form. Instead, you are stepping into something different. Something aligned. Something that allows you to move forward without the burden of what was behind you. Archangel Michael emphasizes that restoration is not always instant in appearance, but it is immediate in activation. The moment you release, the process begins. A shift takes place. The outcome starts to change direction, even if you do not see the full result right away. And that requires trust. Trust that what you released was worth letting go. Trust that what is being restored will be greater than what you were holding on to. Trust that your obedience in this moment is not wasted, but is positioning you for something better. Because many times, what you think you are losing is actually what was holding you back from receiving something greater. And when you release it, you do not end up empty. You end up open. Open for peace. Open for clarity. Open for restoration that could not have entered while your spirit was closed. This is why tonight matters. Because this is not just about avoiding division. This is about stepping into restoration. This is about aligning with what heaven is already ready to release. This is about allowing what has been blocked to begin flowing again. And you are not waiting for it. You are activating it. Right now. Through one decision. Through one release. Through one moment of choosing peace over everything else that is pulling at you. And when you do, you will feel it. Not just in your mind, but in your spirit. A shift, a lightness, a clarity that reminds you that you made the right choice. Because restoration always follows release. And tonight it is already being released over you. Type "I receive restoration" in the comments if you receive this message. Blessing code 7777 is now activated. There is a reason you are hearing this message and not the other person. There is a reason this awareness has reached you in this exact moment, before the night closes, before the emotions settle deeper, before the distance becomes harder to bridge. Archangel Michael reveals something that shifts your entire perspective. You are not just a participant in this situation. You are the one being positioned to transform it. Because in every moment of tension, someone must decide to rise above reaction. Someone must choose clarity over confusion. Someone must carry peace when everything else is pulling toward division. And tonight, that someone is you. This is not by accident. This is not because you are weaker. This is because you are aware. And awareness carries responsibility. Archangel Michael calls this the role of the peacemaker, not someone who avoids conflict, not someone who suppresses truth, but someone who carries a higher level of understanding in the middle of emotional pressure. Someone who sees beyond the surface. Someone who recognizes that what is happening is not just about what was said, but about what is trying to form. And that changes how you respond. Because when you see clearly, you no longer react impulsively. You respond intentionally. You begin to ask different questions. Instead of "why did they do this?" you begin to ask, "what is trying to come between us?" Instead of "how do I defend myself?" you begin to ask, "how do I protect what matters here?" Instead of "why should I be the one to move first?" you begin to understand, "I am the one who sees what others may not yet see." And that awareness is power. But it is also a calling. Because being the peacemaker does not always feel comfortable. It requires you to move when your emotions are telling you to stay still. It requires you to soften when your pride is telling you to hold your ground. It requires you to reach out when part of you wants to withdraw. And in those moments, it can feel like you are giving more than the other person. It can feel like you are the only one trying. But Archangel Michael makes this clear. You are not operating on the same level in this moment. You are operating with awareness. You are operating with understanding. You are operating with the ability to see what is at stake beyond the immediate situation. And that changes your role. Because peacemakers do not wait for perfect conditions. They create alignment in imperfect moments. They choose connection when division is easier. They carry calm when tension is rising. And in doing so, they shift the entire direction of what could have unfolded. You may not see the full impact immediately. You may not receive the response you expect right away. But the moment you choose to act from peace instead of reaction, something changes. The pattern is interrupted. The cycle is broken. The momentum of division is slowed. And space is created for something different to take place. This is how storms are calmed, not by force but by presence. Not by control but by alignment. Not by winning but by restoring. Archangel Michael reveals that throughout your life, you have likely been placed in moments like this before. Moments where you felt the tension. Moments where you sensed that things could go one way or another. And in those moments, your response determined the outcome more than you realized at the time. And this moment is no different. Except now you see it. Now you understand it. Now you are aware of what is happening beneath the surface. And that awareness means you have the ability to choose differently. To act differently. To shift what could have continued without interruption. Because not everyone will recognize these moments when they come. Not everyone will see the weight of a single night's decision. Not everyone will understand how quickly division can take root. But you do. And that is why you are being called into this role. Not to carry everything. Not to fix everything. But to initiate something. To be the one who chooses peace first. To be the one who refuses to let the moment define the relationship. To be the one who steps into alignment when everything else feels out of place. And when you do, you are not just changing this situation. You are setting a standard. You are establishing a pattern of response that protects your future. You are becoming someone who does not allow temporary emotions to create permanent consequences. That is what it means to be a peacemaker. Not perfect, not always easy, but intentional. And tonight, that intention matters more than ever. Because this is not just about calming a moment. This is about shaping what comes next. This is about deciding what kind of energy you carry forward. This is about choosing who you become in moments like this. And you are not being asked to do this alone. You are being guided. You are being strengthened. You are being supported in making a choice that aligns with something greater than what you feel right now. So stand in that awareness. Move with that clarity. Choose with that understanding. Because the storm does not have to win. Not when peace is present. Not when awareness is active. Not when you decide to rise above what is trying to pull you down. And tonight that decision belongs to you. Type "I am a peacemaker" in the comments if you receive this message. Lesson code 8888 is now activated. This is the moment where everything comes together. Not tomorrow. Not next week. Not when it feels easier or more convenient. This moment, right now, is where the shift is sealed. Archangel Michael stands with unwavering authority, not observing, not suggesting, but declaring. Because what has been revealed to you was not meant to be heard and ignored. It was meant to be acted on. Tonight is not just another night in your life. It is a line, a spiritual line between what you carry and what you release. Between what continues and what ends. Between division and peace. And Archangel Michael speaks with clarity that leaves no room for hesitation. Do not cross into rest carrying what was meant to be released. Because the night is not empty. It is a gateway. It is where what you choose settles into your spirit and begins shaping what comes next. And if you cross into that space holding anger, holding pride, holding silence that should have been broken, you are not just going to sleep. You are allowing those things to take root in a place where they grow unseen. But if you cross into that same night with release, with intention, with peace, you step into alignment. You step into protection. You step into a different outcome entirely. This is why this message found you. Not to inform you, but to position you. Because there are two paths before you right now. One where you carry everything exactly as it is, unresolved, unspoken, unhealed, and allow it to quietly shape your tomorrow. And one where you make a decision, right now, to break the pattern, to release the weight, to choose something higher than what your emotions are pulling you toward. And that decision is not small. It is prophetic. It is a response that heaven recognizes. Because obedience in moments like this does not just change situation. It shifts timelines. Archangel Michael declares that what you do in this moment will echo beyond tonight. It will affect conversations that have not happened yet. It will influence outcomes that have not unfolded yet. It will determine whether something grows or dissolves before it has the chance to take hold. And you are not being left without guidance. You have been shown the pattern. You have been shown the strategy. You have been shown the consequence. And now, you are being given the final instruction. Act. Release what you are holding. Speak what needs to be spoken, with peace, not reaction. Let go of what your pride is trying to protect. Use connection over possession. Choose clarity over silence. Choose peace before the night closes. Because once this moment passes, it does not return in the same way. Opportunities like this, moments of awareness, moments of clarity, moments where you can interrupt what is forming, do not remain open indefinitely. They require response. They require movement. They require you to step into alignment while the door is still open. And right now, it is open. Right now you feel it. That pull in your spirit. Awareness that something is at stake. That knowing that this is not something to ignore. That is not pressure. That is confirmation. That is your spirit recognizing truth when it hears it. So do not delay. Do not overthink. Do not allow another moment to pass where what you are holding continues to settle. Because peace is not something that will force itself into your life. It is something you choose. And tonight you are being given that choice clearly, directly, and without confusion. Archangel Michael has spoken. The warning has been delivered. The strategy has been exposed. The outcome has been revealed. Now, the decision belongs to you. And whatever you choose will follow you. So choose carefully. Choose intentionally. Choose peace before you sleep. Because this is not just the end of a message. This is the beginning of a shift. And it starts with you. Type "I choose peace" tonight in the comments if you receive this message. Blessing code 9999 is now activated. As you stand in this final moment of decision, understand this: every act of obedience you take is not just changing your life. It is opening a path for someone else who is still trapped in division. The word declares, those who bring peace will shine like the morning light. And right now, that light is being extended through this message into homes that are on the edge of breaking. I feel it strongly. This is not just a message to hear. It is a mission to carry forward so others do not miss their moment. When you sow through Super Thanks or through the PayPal link in the description and QR code, you are releasing a seed that becomes oil in another person's storm, restoring what was about to be lost. Heaven records every act, and what you release in faith returns to you in multiplied favor, peace, and restoration over your own life. This is your moment to act with purpose, not hesitation. Step forward now. Sow into this mission, and let God use you to bring unity where the enemy tried to divide.